This is Dr. Mike, and each week I try to offer you a discussion from my perspective on the history that we are studying. And of course, Western civilization, the first section, is really quite an interesting study of the beginnings of what became the West and how we think and how we operate as a Western people. Of course, Western civilization is limited in perspective in that we are ignoring some very interesting history that's going on in the world other than Western civilization. Western civilization doesn't interact very much with Muslim history, with Asian history, with Indian history, with African history. It's mainly about the West. And of course, we do have some influences as we bring in different pieces from other civilizations. But I want to spend just a moment to talk to you about some of the things that we're discussing in the discussion board to help clarify maybe your thinking. We start Western civilization at a particular point about the Sumerian times. And the major reason is because that was when the first writing was developed and people began to keep records. We don't have any records previous to that. There were people here and on the planet, and they were busy and they were doing things, but history was mainly oral history. And because it was oral, nothing was kept written. So it's very difficult as historians for us to go back without artifacts that we can translate into something more meaningful. The period before the beginning of civilization were mainly people were hunters and gatherers, and we do have some factual knowledge about that period of the time, but without written records. We are led to believe that the groups that were hunters and gatherers probably functioned in groups of about 20 people. One of the important studies that have been done in recent years with the Aborigines in Australia, which live very similar to that, was that they have more free time than any other people on the planet. We generally erroneously believe that when you're a hunter and gatherer, you spent 24/7 looking for food. That really was not the case. It took about 2.5 days probably to find enough food to feed the group for a week. And so then the rest of the time was, recreational or, whatever else they wanted to do. They had a lot of free time. As you move toward more settled, sedentary type situations with agriculture and whatever, there's more and more work. If you've ever lived on a farm, you realize that farming is the most labor intensive occupation on the planet. There's always, cows to feed and crops to tend and hay to get up and all those things. And so really, as they moved into this civilizing situation, there's a lot of organizing factors, as our question for discussion leads us to talk about this week. Whatever the organizing factions, whether it was protection, socialization, education, whatever it was, or religion, those factors were important. But as tasks became more unique and diverse, and then of course labor also increased. One of the major benefits of living together was that they not all had to go out and look for food. So they're able to differentiate and diversify their abilities. So people began to make pottery, and some made baskets, and some produced other kinds of food, while the rest went out to find food for the group. And so it allowed for a great deal of diversification. I tend to think that religion was one of the major organizing factors, because each of these cities that we look at were built initially around these huge altar type structures or ziggurats where sacrifices were made to the gods and other beliefs. You find the same kind of thing in Central America. There were the same kind of structures in the Mississippian Delta in North America. So this was something that was tied to their religion. And it's very difficult to have religious services and worship with just a very small group of people. It's a lot more effective and a lot more fun, to be honest, when you can meet together with larger groups. And so maybe this is one of those regions. From religious studies, we also understand that we've never found a culture in the world that did not have some kind of religious belief. So it is tuned into the genetics, apparently, of the human race to have something to worship bigger than ourselves. And so we have a lot of things that go on with that. So why civilization? Maybe just for convenience. It could have been for protection. could have been for religious worship, for social interactions, those kind of things. The other thing is important is where they built these civilizations. Some of the oldest in the world, the Egyptian along the Nile River, the area around the Tigris-Euphrates River, the Yangtze River in China, the Indus River in India. They built near water because water was essential. You had to have water for religious observances, for purification, and for washing. You had to have water to drink, water to live, maybe water even for transportation to move up and down the river to keep from walking, because these were a walking civilization. Everywhere they were able to move, they had to walk. And so this is at the very beginning. You don't have animals domesticated or things needed to carry you. That's going to come later. But living together opened up the doors and the avenues for a more civilized society. And of course, that's what we're looking at this week. So I hope these thoughts have meant something to you. Maybe channel your thinking in certain directions to think further and respond further. I encourage you to get involved with the discussion this week. We've had some really great points. Always read not only the ones you're responding to, but read all of the conversation, because you will be inspired with many points that will help you with your overall understanding of these events. So hopefully I'll see you next week. And until then, please let me know if I can be of help. Thank you.